Flight attendant grabbed a 14-year-old boy by the shoulder, shoved a taser into his ribs, and fired. No warning, no hesitation. 50,000 volts tore through his body while he stood in the aisle of a commercial airplane asking to use the bathroom. His back arched, his legs gave out. He dropped face first onto the cabin floor, convulsing, choking, eyes rolling white. And the flight attendant, who just electrocuted a child, straightened her uniform, stepped over his shaking body, and radioed the cockpit to report him as a threat. His mother was screaming 3 feet away. 160 passengers watched in horror. And none of them knew that this boy's father was a civil rights lawyer who had spent 20 years destroying people exactly like her. Subscribe now, follow this story to the very last word, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this reaches. 3 days before any of this happened, Andre Brooks was sitting at a kitchen table in Atlanta, Georgia, staring at a Harvard brochure like it was a map to another planet. He was 14, 8th grade, honor roll since 6th. He played trumpet in his school jazz band, volunteered at church on weekends, and had never once been sent to a principal's office. His teachers used words like exceptional and mature beyond his years. His neighbors called him that good kid from the Brooks house. He held doors open for strangers. He said yes, ma'am, and no, sir, without being reminded. None of that was going to matter on Flight 482, not one bit of it. His mother, Monica Brooks, had spread 4 college brochures across that kitchen table. Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Northeastern. She had been planning this trip for 3 months. Hotels booked, campus tours scheduled, everything lined up. Andre picked up the Harvard brochure and looked at his mother. Mom, you think I could actually get in here? Monica didn't blink. Baby, I think you can get in anywhere you want. That's the whole point of this trip. Now his father, Marcus Brooks. You need to understand who this man was. 20 years practicing civil rights law, the kind of lawyer other lawyers warned their clients about. He had taken on police departments, Fortune 500 companies, school districts, and state governments. He had won cases that legal journals wrote about. He was not loud. He was not flashy. He was precise. He was relentless. And when Marcus Brooks walked into a courtroom, people on the other side of the table started sweating before he opened his briefcase. Marcus wanted to be on that trip. He wanted to walk those campuses with his son, but he was locked into the final week of a federal discrimination trial. A black employee fired after reporting racial harassment. Marcus couldn't leave. Not now. The timing was brutal. The night before the flight, Marcus sat on the edge of Andre's bed. Andre was packing. Headphones, a notebook with questions for each campus visit, and a book on constitutional law that Marcus had given him for his birthday. Marcus watched his son pack that book and felt something pull tight in his chest. Andre, look at me. Andre stopped. He knew that voice. That wasn't Dad. That was Attorney Brooks. Yes, sir. You're about to fly for the first time. You're going to be in airports, on a plane, around people who don't know you and don't care to. I need you to remember what I've taught you. I know, Dad. No, I need you to hear me, not just listen. If someone in a uniform speaks to you, you answer with respect, even if they're wrong, especially if they're wrong. You keep your voice low. You keep your hands where people can see them. You do not argue. You do not react. You find your mother. You understand me? Andre looked at his father, 14 years old, and he already knew exactly why this conversation was happening. Every black boy in America gets this talk. The rules for staying alive in spaces that weren't built for you. Don't give them a reason. Don't give them an excuse. Be twice as good and half as threatening. And even then, pray that's enough. I understand, Dad. Marcus pulled him into a hug. Held on longer than usual. Something in his gut felt wrong. He couldn't name it, just a low hum of dread that he pushed down because he had a trial to win in the morning. 6:15 the next morning, Monica and Andre walked into Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Flight at 8:40. Monica had printed boarding passes, packed snacks, triple-checked everything. Andre was electric, eyes everywhere, watching the departure boards flip through city names, watching planes push back from gates through the terminal windows. He grabbed his mother's arm and said, Mom, one day I'm going to fly all over the world. Monica smiled. One day, baby. They boarded Skybridge Airlines Flight 482 at 8:20, Boeing 737, about 160 passengers. Monica let Andre take the window seat so he could watch the clouds. Here's where everything starts to turn. The lead flight attendant was a woman named Carla Whitman, 41, 12 years with Skybridge. She stood at the cabin door greeting passengers as they filed on. Warm smile for the elderly white couple. Welcome aboard. Helped the white woman wrestle a bag into the overhead bin. Told a little white girl, "Oh, I love your backpack." Then Monica and Andre stepped through the door. The smile dropped off Carla's face like it had never been there. Boarding passes. No greeting. No warmth. No welcome aboard. Just 2 flat words and a handout. Monica handed them over. Carla glanced at the passes, looked up at Andre, looked back at the passes. Took a beat too long, like she was checking if they belonged there. Row 14, that way. Pointed finger, 0 eye contact. They were dismissed. Andre caught it. Of course he caught it. He had counted. 10 passengers before them got the real Carla. He and his mother got a wall. He looked at Monica. She gave him the nod. The one that means, keep walking. Don't react. We'll deal with it later. They sat down. Andre buckled in, pulled out his book, started reading. But he couldn't focus. He kept replaying it. 10 smiles, then nothing, like a light switch. On for them, off for us. He said nothing. He remembered his father's words. Don't give them a reason. Take off at 8:52. Andre pressed his forehead against the window and watched Atlanta disappear. The neighborhoods shrank to dots. The highways became threads. Then the clouds swallowed everything, and for a few perfect minutes, Andre forgot about Carla Whitman. He forgot about the cold voice. He was flying, first time in his life, and he was headed to see colleges that could change everything. Monica watched him and felt her whole body relax. This was why she planned it, this wonder on his face, this boy still believing the world had room for him. 45 minutes in, Captain turned on the seatbelt sign. Light turbulence. Routine. Monica tightened her belt. Andre did the same. 10 minutes later, a white teenager, 15 or 16, 3 rows ahead of Andre, unbuckled his seatbelt, stood up, and walked to the back restroom, right past Carla Whitman. She was standing in the aisle near the galley. She saw him, looked directly at him, said nothing. The kid used the restroom, came back, sat down. Not one word. The seatbelt sign was on, and this boy walked freely without a single challenge. Monica saw the whole thing. She filed it, not because she wanted trouble, because she had been trained by a lifetime of experience to notice. 20 minutes later, Andre shifted in his seat. He leaned to his mother. "Mom, I really need to go to the bathroom." Monica looked at the seatbelt sign. Still on. She remembered the white kid who had walked 10 minutes ago without a peep from anyone. "Go ahead, baby, quick and polite." Andre unbuckled, stood up, took 1 step into the aisle. 1. "Sit down. Now." The voice hit like a slap. Every head in 5 rows turned. Andre spun around. Carla Whitman was 3 feet behind him, and the look on her face was not concern, not professionalism. It was hostility. Raw, open, undisguised hostility aimed at a 14-year-old boy. Andre steadied himself. "Ma'am, I just need to use the restroom. The seatbelt sign is on. Sit down." "Yes, ma'am, I see that. But someone else just went a few minutes ago, and I really need to go." That sentence, those words, that calm, polite, factual observation, that's what broke Carla Whitman open. Because Andre had done something she didn't expect from him. He noticed. He compared. He pointed out the double standard, respectfully, quietly, and it enraged her. Her face flushed dark red. She raised her voice loud enough for half the plane to hear. "I said sit down. I am not telling you again." Monica was on her feet instantly. "Excuse me, my son is 14 years old. He's asking to use the restroom. I just watched another passenger do the exact same thing, and you didn't say one word to him." Carla turned on Monica. "Ma'am, if you don't sit down and control your son, I will have both of you removed from this aircraft." Control your son. Those 3 words landed in Monica's chest like a fist. Control your son, like he was an animal that got loose, like a polite request from a child was a containment problem. My son has been completely respectful, Monica said, and her voice was vibrating with the effort of not exploding. He said, "Yes, ma'am," to you. He explained what he needs. What is your problem? The cabin went dead silent. 160 people were watching. Phones were out. A woman across the aisle, white, mid-50s, Karen Ashford, had already hit record. Carla ignored Monica. She stepped closer to Andre, not to the mother, to the child, got within 2 feet of his face. "You need to comply, right now." Andre's hands were at his sides, open, visible. His voice hadn't gone up a single notch. He was doing everything Marcus had taught him, every single thing, and it was not going to save him. "Ma'am, I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just need to use the restroom, that's all." 3 seconds. That's all it took. Carla Whitman reached into her uniform vest and pulled out a small black device, a compact stun gun, personal taser, smuggled aboard in direct violation of every FAA regulation and every Skybridge policy on the books. Flight attendants are not authorized to carry weapons, period. Not tasers, not pepper spray, nothing. This woman had brought a weapon onto a commercial aircraft and hidden it on her body. She didn't give a warning. She didn't announce what she was holding. She didn't give Andre a single second to react. She pressed it against his stomach and fired. 50,000 volts ripped through a 140-pound boy. Andre's muscles locked so hard his spine arched. A sound came out of him that passengers would describe in depositions as the most horrifying thing they had ever heard. Not a scream, something deeper, something involuntary. The sound a body makes when electricity hijacks every nerve it has. He hit the floor between rows 12 and 13. His limbs jerked, his eyes rolled. The constitutional law book his father had given him tumbled off his seat and landed next to his twitching hand. Monica's scream ripped the cabin apart. She threw herself over him, covered his body with hers. "Andre, Andre, baby, look at me, look at me." Passengers erupted. A man in row 10 shot to his feet. "What the hell did you just do to that kid?" A woman in row 16 was crying. The white teenager, who had walked to the bathroom without a word being said, was frozen in his seat, mouth open. And later, under oath, he would testify, "I did the same exact thing he did. Nobody stopped me. Nobody even looked at me." Carla Whitman stepped backward. She looked at Andre seizing on the floor. She looked at Monica screaming over her child. And she picked up her crew radio and said the words that would become the foundation of a federal case. "I have a non-compliant passenger in the main cabin requesting emergency landing and law enforcement." Non-compliant. A 14-year-old boy who said, "Yes, ma'am," and asked for the bathroom was now classified as a security threat at 30,000 feet. The captain's voice came through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're making an unscheduled stop in Philadelphia due to a security situation on board. Please remain in your seats." Andre was still on the floor. His body had stopped jerking, but he didn't know where he was. He was crying, not loud, the quiet kind, the kind where a child's pain is so enormous that sound can barely get out. Monica held his face. "You're okay, baby. Mommy's here. Just breathe. Breathe." A retired nurse named Dorothy Chen pushed past Carla, dropped to her knees, and checked Andre's pulse. She checked his eyes. She looked at Monica. "His heart rate is way too fast. He needs a doctor the second we land." Carla tried to block Dorothy. "Ma'am, return to your seat. This is a security matter." Dorothy Chen looked at this woman with 50 years of medical authority behind her eyes. "This is a child. Step away from him. Now." Carla backed off. 22 minutes. That's how long it took to land in Philadelphia. 22 minutes of Monica holding her son on the floor of an airplane. 22 minutes of 160 people sitting in stunned silence. 22 minutes of Carla Whitman standing by the galley, calm, composed, sipping water from a plastic cup like she had just dealt with a routine inconvenience. The plane touched down at 10:17, taxied to a remote gate. The cabin doors opened. 4 armed police officers stepped on board. They did not approach Carla Whitman. They walked directly to row 14. They looked at Andre on the floor, trembling, held by his mother, burn marks visible through his shirt. "Is this the suspect?" Carla nodded. "He assaulted me and refused to comply with crew instructions." She lied, standing in uniform, wings on her chest. She looked at 4 armed officers and lied about a 14-year-old boy she had just electrocuted. They pulled Andre to his feet. He could barely stand. His legs buckled twice. Monica gripped his arm and an officer told her to step back. "That is my son. I am not letting go of him." "Ma'am, step back or you will be detained." They handcuffed him. Metal cuffs on a 14-year-old boy who had been tased for asking to pee. Monica shifted. She stopped begging. She started documenting. "I need every badge number in this jet bridge, every one of you. My husband is attorney Marcus Brooks, and every single one of you is going to answer for this." One officer flinched at the name. Just barely. Just enough for Monica to see it. But he kept moving. They marched Andre off the plane and into a holding room inside the terminal. Andre sat in a plastic chair, handcuffs still on. A paramedic named Reese Santiago arrived and asked to examine him. An officer blocked her. "Suspect needs to be processed first." Reese Santiago did not blink. "He is a minor. He has been subjected to electrical shock. I am examining him right now, or you can explain to a judge why a child in your custody was denied medical care." The officer moved. Reese checked his vitals. Heart rate at 142. Blood pressure dangerously high. 2 burn marks on his abdomen. Dehydration. Shock. "This child needs a hospital. Now." Monica was calling Marcus, hands shaking so hard she misdialed twice. He was in court, phone off. She called 5 times. On the 5th, she left a voicemail that Marcus would later play at a press conference, and when reporters heard it, some of them cried. "Marcus, they tased our baby on the plane. They handcuffed him. He's hurt. I need you. Please come, please." Then she did something that changed the entire trajectory of this story. A passenger had airdropped her a 12-second video clip during the chaos. 12 seconds of Andre on the floor. She sent it to Marcus. In an Atlanta courtroom, Marcus Brooks felt his phone buzz in his jacket. He was cross-examining a witness. He ignored it. It buzzed again. 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 4 times in 30 seconds. Something cold ran through him. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I need a recess. Family emergency." He walked into the hallway, opened his phone, listened to Monica's voicemail. His jaw tightened. He opened the video. 12 seconds. His son, his boy, on the floor of an airplane, body jerking, strangers screaming, a flight attendant standing 5 feet away doing nothing. Marcus Brooks had spent 20 years facing down hostile judges, corporate legal teams, and systems built to crush people who look like him. He had never once lost his composure in a professional setting. His hands shook. He watched it again, memorized every frame, every detail, every face in the background he could identify. Then he called his law partner. 6 words. "Cancel everything. My son was attacked." He booked the next flight to Philadelphia. 90 minutes. He sat in that departure gate and did not move. He did not eat. He did not close his eyes. He pulled up FAA regulations on his laptop. He drafted a federal civil rights complaint on his phone. He contacted 2 national civil rights organizations. He texted a journalist he trusted. He requested a full passenger manifest for Flight 482. He filed a formal complaint with the FAA before his plane even boarded, and he left a voicemail for the CEO of Skybridge Airlines. 4 words at the end. "You made a mistake." Back in Philadelphia, a detective stood in front of Monica and Andre in that holding room, clipboard in hand, smile on his face, the kind of smile that's designed to make problems disappear. "Mrs. Brooks, I understand this was upsetting, but I think the best outcome here, especially for your son, is to put this behind us. The flight attendant says she felt threatened. Your son says he didn't do anything. He said, she said. If we let it go quietly, no charges against Andre, and everyone moves on with their lives." Monica stared at this man. Let it go quietly. No charges against Andre. Her son, the victim, was being offered the privilege of not being punished for being electrocuted. Before she could answer, a voice filled the doorway. "Are you threatening my client's son?" The detective turned. Monica turned. Andre looked up. Marcus Brooks. 6'2", gray suit, briefcase in his left hand, phone recording in his right. He walked into that room the way a man walks into a room when he knows exactly what he's about to do and exactly how it's going to end. Every person felt the air shift. The detective straightened. "Mr. Brooks, no one's threatening anyone. I'm suggesting this can be resolved without further escalation." Marcus set the briefcase down. He looked at Andre, saw the burn marks through his shirt, saw the red welts on his wrists from the cuffs, saw the fear in his son's eyes mixed with something worse. Shame. The kind of shame a child carries when the world punishes him for existing. Marcus turned back to the detective. "Here's what happens next. My son goes to a hospital tonight. Every injury gets documented, photographed, and entered into the medical record. I obtain every second of video footage from that aircraft, every body camera recording from every officer who boarded that plane, and every communication between crew and ground control. Then, I file a federal civil rights complaint against Skybridge Airlines, against the flight attendant who assaulted my child, and against any officer who participated in the unlawful detention of a minor. That process begins in the next 60 minutes. The detective's friendly mask cracked. "Counselor, I think you're blowing this out of proportion." Marcus didn't blink, didn't shift his weight, didn't raise his voice even half a degree. "Detective, in the last 4 hours, a flight attendant illegally carried a weapon onto a commercial aircraft and deployed it against an unarmed, cooperative 14-year-old child. Your officers then handcuffed the victim, denied him medical attention, and attempted to pressure his mother into silence. So I'd encourage you to think very carefully about what you say next, because every word out of your mouth from this point forward will be part of the record." Silence. Long. Heavy. The detective closed his clipboard, looked at Marcus, looked at Monica, looked at Andre, walked out without another word. Monica broke. She pressed into Marcus's chest, and the control she had held for hours shattered. Deep, shaking sobs, the kind a mother holds back until someone strong enough arrives to catch them. Marcus held her with one arm, reached for Andre with the other. "Come here, son." Andre stood, walked to his father, and the three of them stood in that cold, fluorescent holding room, wrapped around each other, and the world outside that door meant nothing for exactly 1 minute. Then Marcus pulled back. He knelt down, eye level with his son. "Are you hurt?" "My stomach, where she got me, and my wrists." Marcus nodded. He put both hands on Andre's shoulders. "Listen to me. What happened to you was not your fault. You did nothing wrong. You did everything I ever taught you, and it still happened. And that is not on you. That is on them. And I promise you, son, they are going to answer for every second of it." Andre looked at his father, and something shifted behind his eyes. The fear didn't disappear, but something stronger moved in front of it. "Okay, Dad." Marcus stood. He took one long breath. He picked up his briefcase. He looked at Monica. He looked at Andre. And the war began. Marcus Brooks did not sleep that night. Not 1 minute. Not 1 second. It was 11:47 p.m. when they finally left the hospital. Andre had been examined, photographed, and documented from head to toe. 2 electrical burn marks on his abdomen, each the size of a quarter. Bruising on both wrists from the handcuffs. Elevated heart rate that took 4 hours to stabilize. A mild concussion from hitting the cabin floor. The emergency room physician, Dr. Alan Woodard, had looked at Marcus after the examination and said, "Mr. Brooks, your son is lucky. A taser discharge at that range on a minor with no cardiac screening beforehand could have stopped his heart." Marcus wrote down every word. He asked Dr. Woodard to repeat it. Then he asked him to say it a third time while Monica recorded it on her phone. Lucky. His son was lucky. Lucky that a weapon fired into his body by a grown woman didn't kill him. Marcus let that word sit in his chest like a stone. They checked into a hotel near the airport at 12:30 in the morning. Monica took Andre to their room. She helped him change out of the clothes he'd been wearing since Atlanta, the same shirt with the taser burn holes in it. and Marcus sealed those clothes in a plastic bag. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. Andre sat on the edge of the hotel bed and looked at his father. "Dad, am I in trouble?" Marcus felt something crack inside him. His 14-year-old son, the one who was tased, the one who was handcuffed, the one with burn marks on his body, was asking if he was in trouble. "No, Andre, you are not in trouble. Not now, not ever, not for this." "But they called me a suspect. The police called me a suspect." Marcus sat next to him. "They were wrong, and I'm going to make sure the whole world knows they were wrong." Andre was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that Marcus would carry with him through every hearing, every deposition, every moment of the next 6 months. "Dad, I did everything you told me. I said, 'Yes, ma'am.' I kept my hands down. I didn't yell. I did everything right. Why did she still do it?" Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. 20 years of civil rights law, hundreds of cases, thousands of arguments, and he did not have an answer for his son. Because sometimes, Andre, doing everything right isn't the point. For people like her, who you are is the offense. And that's not something you can fix by being polite. That's something the system has to fix. And that's what we're going to make them do. Andre nodded slowly. Monica was standing in the bathroom doorway, and she was crying again, silently, where Andre couldn't see. But Marcus saw. He always saw. Andre fell asleep at 1:15 a.m. Monica lay next to him, one hand on his chest, feeling it rise and fall, reassuring herself with each breath that he was still there, still whole, still alive. Marcus sat at the small desk by the window with his laptop open and his phone on speaker. He called his law partner, David Okafor, at 1:30 in the morning. David picked up on the first ring. "Talk to me. I need you to file a preservation notice with Skybridge Airlines before business opens tomorrow. All video footage from Flight 482. All audio recordings. All crew communication logs. All incident reports. Everything. Already drafted. I started it when you called me from the airport." "Good. I also need you to pull every complaint filed against Skybridge in the last 5 years involving minority passengers, federal, state, and any EEOC filings." David paused. "You think there's a pattern?" "I know there's a pattern. What happened to Andre wasn't improvised. That woman was prepared. She had a weapon on her body. She knew how to use it. She had a script ready for the radio call. She used the word non-compliant like she'd been trained to say it. This wasn't one rogue flight attendant. This was policy." David was quiet for 3 seconds. "Marcus, if you're right about that, this isn't just an assault case." "I know exactly what it is." By 2:30 a.m., Marcus had drafted a 12-page federal civil rights complaint. By 3 a.m., he had emailed it to his team with instructions to file at 9 sharp. By 3:45, he had sent formal evidence preservation demands to Skybridge Airlines, the Philadelphia Police Department, the Philadelphia Airport Authority, and the FAA. He didn't go to bed. He sat in that chair and worked until the sun came up. At 7:12 the next morning, the first news story broke. A Philadelphia television station ran a segment with the headline, "Disruption on Skybridge Flight Leads to Emergency Landing." The story was 30 seconds long. It described a passenger disturbance that forced the plane to divert to Philadelphia. It mentioned that a juvenile passenger had been detained by authorities after refusing to comply with crew instructions. No mention of a taser, no mention of the flight attendant, no mention of a 14-year-old boy being electrocuted. Monica saw it on the hotel television and called Marcus from the other room. "They're already spinning it, Marcus. They're making Andre the problem." Marcus had expected this. He had seen it 100 times. The institution strikes first. They control the language. Disturbance, detained, non-compliant, refused to comply. Every word chosen to make the victim sound dangerous and the aggressor sound reasonable. "They won't control it for long," Marcus said. "Get Andre dressed. We're going to the hospital for a follow-up, and then we're holding a press conference." At 9:14 a.m., Marcus's team filed the federal civil rights complaint. Simultaneously, David Okafor sent the preservation notices to every entity involved. The legal clock was now ticking. At 10 a.m., Skybridge Airlines released their first public statement. Marcus read it on his phone in the hospital waiting room while Andre was getting a cardiac screening. The statement said, Skybridge Airlines is committed to the safety and security of all passengers and crew. On the flight in question, a passenger became non-compliant with crew instructions during a period of active turbulence. Our flight attendant followed established safety protocols. We are cooperating fully with authorities and conducting an internal review. Marcus read it twice. Then he read it a third time out loud to Monica. Safety protocols, Monica said. Tasing a child is a safety protocol? That's their position, for now. And the part about non-compliant? Marcus, he asked to use the bathroom. I know, and by this afternoon, so will everyone else. At 11:30 a.m., Marcus held a press conference on the steps of the federal courthouse in Philadelphia. He stood behind a cluster of microphones with Monica beside him. Andre was not present. Marcus had made that decision. His son was not going to be paraded in front of cameras. His son was going to be protected. Marcus spoke for 12 minutes. He did not raise his voice once. He did not use emotional language. He spoke like a surgeon cutting with precision. He laid out the facts. A 14-year-old boy on his first flight. A request to use the restroom. A white teenager who made the same request minutes earlier without being challenged. A flight attendant who carried an unauthorized weapon aboard a commercial aircraft. A taser deployed against an unarmed minor. Handcuffs placed on the victim. Medical attention initially denied. And a police detective who pressured the boy's mother to stay silent. Then Marcus said, I want to be very clear about something. My son did everything right. He was polite. He was respectful. He complied with every instruction until a weapon was used against him without warning or justification. What happened on Flight 482 was not a safety response. It was an assault. And my office has filed a federal civil rights complaint this morning that will prove it. A reporter asked, Mr. Brooks, Skybridge says their crew followed established protocols. What's your response? Marcus looked directly into the camera. If tasing a child is their protocol, then the protocol is the crime. That line hit the internet like a match on gasoline. Within 2 hours, it had been quoted by every major news outlet in the country. By 3 p.m., the hashtag Flight 482 was trending nationally. By 5 p.m., it was the #1 topic on every social media platform in America. And then the video dropped. Karen Ashford, the white woman in her 50s who had been sitting across the aisle from Andre, uploaded her full recording to the internet at 4:27 p.m. She had captured everything. Andre standing up, Carla confronting him, Andre saying, yes, ma'am, Monica intervening, Carla pulling the taser, the discharge, Andre hitting the floor, Monica screaming, Carla stepping back and radioing the cockpit. 4 minutes and 11 seconds. Uncut, unedited, crystal clear audio. Within 1 hour, the video had 2 million views. Within 3 hours, 8 million. By midnight, it had crossed 20 million. And the narrative Skybridge had built that morning was in ashes. Because the video showed everything. It showed a polite child, a hostile adult, an unprovoked attack. And it showed something else that people couldn't stop talking about. It showed that the moment before Carla fired the taser, Andre's hands were at his sides, open, visible, completely non-threatening. A 14-year-old boy standing in an airplane aisle with his palms open and a grown woman jamming a weapon into his body. At 6:15 p.m., Marcus was in the hotel room reviewing the video, frame by frame, when his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Brooks, this is Gregory Holt. I'm general counsel for Skybridge Airlines. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Mr. Holt. I'm calling because we believe this situation can be resolved in a way that benefits everyone, especially your son. We don't want this to become a prolonged public spectacle. Go on. We're prepared to offer a settlement of $75,000 in exchange for a full release of claims and a non-disclosure agreement. We'll also cover all medical expenses and issue a private apology to your family." Marcus was quiet for 5 seconds. $75,000. That's correct. It's a generous offer given the circumstances, and it would allow your family to move forward without the stress of litigation. Mr. Holt, let me make sure I understand. Your employee illegally brought a weapon onto a plane. She used that weapon on my 14-year-old son without provocation. Your airline's own statement called this a protocol. And you're offering $75,000 and a gag order. Mr. Brooks, I wouldn't characterize it that way. I would, and so will a jury. The answer is no. And Mr. Holt, you should know that my team has already filed preservation demands on all internal communications, training materials, and personnel records related to Flight 482 and Carla Whitman. If a single document is altered or destroyed, I will add spoliation charges to the complaint. Have a good evening. He hung up. Monica was watching him from across the room. How much? $75,000. That's an insult. It's not an insult. It's a tell. They offered money within 24 hours. They're scared, Monica. They know what's in those files. At 9 p.m., the counterattack began. A conservative news outlet ran a segment questioning Andre's behavior on the plane. The anchor used the phrase, "what we're not being told," and suggested there was more to this story. An anonymous source described as a fellow passenger claimed Andre had been loud and aggressive before the taser incident. No name, no face, no corroboration. By 10 p.m., an account on social media with 30,000 followers posted Andre's school photo alongside the caption, "The mainstream media doesn't want you to see his disciplinary record." There was no disciplinary record. Andre had never been disciplined at school. The post was a fabrication. By 11 p.m., 6 more accounts were posting similar content. Andre's name trending alongside words like thug and non-compliant. Bot patterns, coordinated posting, identical language across different platforms. Marcus saw it happening in real time. He was sitting at that hotel desk, scrolling, cataloging, screenshotting. He had seen this playbook before. He had seen it used against his clients. Attack the victim's character. Flood the public with doubt. Make the conversation about the boy instead of the woman who tased him. But this time, they made a critical error. They went after a 14-year-old child, and the public backlash was immediate and ferocious. Andre's school principal released a statement at 11:45 p.m. Andre Brooks is an exemplary student with a spotless record. Any claims to the contrary are false and defamatory. His jazz band director posted a video. Andre is one of the finest young men I have ever taught. This is character assassination of a child. By midnight, the fake accounts were being mass reported. By 1 a.m., 3 of them were suspended. By 2 a.m., a digital forensics researcher posted a thread tracing the bot accounts to an IP range associated with a reputation management firm called Meridian Strategic Communications. Marcus saved that thread. He would need it later. The next morning, 48 hours after the incident, Andre woke up in the hotel room and asked his mother, "Are people saying bad things about me?" Monica hesitated. Marcus, standing in the doorway, answered for her. "Some people are. People who don't know you and never will. But here's what I need you to understand. For every person lying about you online, there are 100,000 who watched that video and saw the truth. You don't owe the liars anything. Not your energy, not your tears. Nothing." Andre processed this. Then he asked, "Can I call Grandma? She's probably worried." Marcus almost smiled. His son, in the middle of all of this, was thinking about his grandmother. "Yeah, buddy, call Grandma." At 10 a.m., Marcus received a call from Special Agent Denise Calloway of the FBI's Civil Rights Division. "Mr. Brooks, we've been monitoring the situation involving your son. I'd like to meet with you today if possible." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The FBI doesn't call 48 hours after an incident unless they already have something. Unless this wasn't new to them. "I can meet you in 2 hours. My office, Federal Building, 10th floor." Marcus arrived at noon. Agent Calloway was a black woman in her late 40s. Sharp eyes, no-nonsense posture. She didn't offer coffee. She didn't make small talk. She sat across from Marcus and opened a folder. Mr. Brooks, what happened to your son is not an isolated incident. Marcus leaned forward. Tell me. We've received 14 complaints against Skybridge Airlines in the last 3 years, all involving minority passengers, all involving escalation by crew members over minor or non-existent infractions. 7 of those complaints mention the use of unauthorized physical force. 14 complaints? That we know of. Most victims didn't have lawyers. Most accepted settlements with NDAs. Your son's case is the first one with video evidence and a family willing to fight publicly. Marcus's mind was already racing. You're telling me this is systemic. Agent Calloway closed the folder. I'm telling you that what I share with you today stays in this room until we're ready. We've been building a case. Your son's incident just gave us what we needed to move. What do you need from me? Everything you have, every document, every communication, and your patience. We're going to take this apart from the inside. Marcus sat with that for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been burning in him since the moment he saw that video. The taser. Where did she get it? Agent Calloway's expression shifted, just slightly, just enough for a man who spent 20 years reading faces across courtrooms to notice. That's part of what we're investigating. We have reason to believe that Carla Whitman was not the only crew member carrying unauthorized weapons. Marcus felt his pulse jump. How many? We're not sure yet, but Mr. Brooks, I want to be honest with you. This is bigger than one flight attendant. This is bigger than one flight. When we pull this thread, it's going to unravel something that Skybridge Airlines has been building for a very long time. Marcus stood up. He shook Agent Calloway's hand. He walked out of that federal building into the Philadelphia afternoon, and for the first time since this started, he understood the full scope of what he was fighting. This wasn't about Andre anymore. It never had been. Andre was the match. But the fire had been laid years ago, hidden behind corporate policy, buried under settlements and silence, protected by the one thing powerful institutions rely on more than anything else: the assumption that nobody would ever fight back. At 3 p.m. that afternoon, Marcus walked into the hotel room where Monica and Andre were watching television. Andre had his constitutional law book open on his lap, the same book that had fallen next to his hand on the airplane floor. He was reading it. Marcus looked at that book. He looked at his son, and he made a decision. He picked up his phone and called David Okafor. David, cancel the civil filing. David went silent. What? Cancel the civil filing. We're going federal. All of it. I just came from the FBI. This goes deeper than we thought. Skybridge has been running a racial profiling operation disguised as security policy, and we are going to burn it to the ground. David exhaled. Marcus, you know what that means. Federal means years. Federal means they'll throw everything they have at you. They already threw everything they had at my son. He's 14, and he took 50,000 volts and didn't break. I think I can handle some lawyers. He hung up. Andre looked up from his book. Dad, what does federal mean? Marcus sat down across from him. It means we're not just fighting for you anymore. It means we're fighting for every kid who ever got treated the way you were treated and didn't have someone to fight for them. Andre thought about this. He closed his book. He looked at his father with eyes that were older than they had been 3 days ago. Good. 2 weeks after the incident, Marcus Brooks received a phone call that changed the shape of everything. It was 6:47 a.m. He was in his home office in Atlanta. He had barely been back 3 days. The dining room table was buried under case files, medical records, printed screenshots of the bot accounts, and a growing stack of passenger depositions. Monica had stopped asking him to come to bed. She just brought him coffee at midnight and kissed his forehead and left him to work. His phone rang. No caller ID. He almost let it go, but something made him pick up. Mr. Brooks, my name is Janelle Parsons. I'm a flight attendant with Skybridge Airlines. I've worked for the company for 8 years, and I need to talk to you about what really happened on Flight 482. Marcus set his coffee down. He didn't say a word for 5 seconds. He had been a lawyer long enough to know that the most important thing you can do when someone wants to talk is shut up and let them. I'm listening, Miss Parsons. Not on the phone. I need to meet you in person. And I need you to understand something before I do. If Skybridge finds out I'm talking to you, I will lose my job. I will lose my pension. I will be blacklisted from every airline in this country. I am putting everything on the line. Why? Janelle Parsons was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was shaking. Because I watched that video of your son, and I know it wasn't the first time. I know because I've seen it happen before. And I said nothing, and I can't live with that anymore. Marcus closed his eyes. Where do you want to meet? Somewhere no one would expect. There's a public library in Decatur, the branch on Church Street, tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll be in the back, near the history section. I'll be there. Mr. Brooks, come alone. She hung up. Marcus sat in that chair for a full minute without moving. Then he called David Okafor. David, I think we just got our whistleblower. The next afternoon, Tuesday, 2:14 p.m., Marcus walked into the Decatur Public Library carrying nothing but a legal pad and a pen. No briefcase, no phone recorder visible. He wanted Janelle Parsons to feel safe. He found her in the back corner, exactly where she said she would be. She was a black woman, mid-30s, wearing a baseball cap pulled low and sunglasses indoors. Her hands were wrapped around a paper coffee cup, and even from 10 feet away, Marcus could see them trembling. He sat down across from her. Miss Parsons, thank you for meeting me. She pulled off the sunglasses. Her eyes were red. She hadn't been sleeping either. Before I say anything, I need to know. Can you protect me? Legally. Can you actually protect me from what they'll do? I can file for federal whistleblower protection the moment you give a formal statement. That means Skybridge cannot terminate you, retaliate against you, or interfere with your employment. If they try, we sue them for that too. And if they come after me anyway, then they add another count to the case that's already going to destroy them. Janelle stared at him. She was measuring him, deciding. Marcus let her take all the time she needed. Okay, she said. Okay, here's what I know. What came out of Janelle Parsons' mouth over the next 90 minutes would become the backbone of the federal case against Skybridge Airlines. She told Marcus about a program, an internal program that Skybridge never put in writing in any official policy manual, but that every crew member knew about. They called it Priority Watch. And it worked like this. Before every flight, the lead flight attendant received a passenger manifest with certain names highlighted. Those highlighted names were flagged for what Skybridge internally called enhanced monitoring. Marcus stopped her. How were the names selected? Janelle laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. How do you think? Names that sounded ethnic. Passengers who had booked last-minute one-way tickets. Young men traveling alone. Young men traveling in groups. Sometimes it was based on prior complaints, but most of the time, Mr. Brooks, it was based on exactly what you think it was based on. Race, national origin, sometimes religion. I once saw a manifest where a passenger was flagged because his name was Mohammed and he had booked a one-way ticket to Detroit. The man was 73 years old and going to visit his grandchildren. Marcus was writing. Every word. How long has this been going on? As long as I've worked there, 8 years, probably longer. It was never in the employee handbook. It was never in any official training. It was passed down verbally. Senior crew to junior crew. You learned it in your first month on the job. They called it situational awareness. They said it was for passenger safety, but everyone knew what it really was. And the weapons, the tasers. Janelle's hands tightened on her coffee cup. About 3 years ago, Skybridge started what they called a Voluntary Security Enhancement Program. Crew members could opt in to receive personal defense devices, tasers, compact ones, easy to conceal. The airline provided them. Marcus put his pen down. The airline provided them. Yes, they weren't bought by individual flight attendants. Skybridge purchased them in bulk and distributed them to crew members who volunteered for the program. Carla Whitman didn't smuggle that taser onto Flight 482. Skybridge gave it to her. Marcus felt the room tilt. This wasn't a rogue employee. This wasn't one bad actor who broke the rules. Skybridge Airlines, a major commercial carrier, had systematically armed its flight attendants with weapons that violated federal aviation law and directed them to use racial profiling to select targets. How many crew members are carrying tasers right now? Janelle shook her head. I don't know the exact number, but the program was popular, especially after some incidents that got media coverage a few years back. They pushed it hard. Said it was optional, but if you opted in, you got priority scheduling and a small bonus. So a lot of people signed up. Do you have any documentation, emails, memos, training materials? Janelle reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. She slid it across the table. Internal emails between regional managers discussing the program, a training PowerPoint that was shown to crew during onboarding, and a list of names, crew members who received tasers. Marcus opened the envelope. He looked at the first page. An email from a Skybridge regional operations manager to a group of senior flight attendants, dated 14 months before the incident with Andre. The subject line read, Security Enhancement Program, Phase 2 Rollout. The email included the sentence, as we expand the program to additional hubs, please remind participating crew members that devices should be carried discreetly and their use should only be documented through the standard incident reporting process. Carried discreetly. Use documented through standard incident reporting. Corporate language for hide the weapon and cover your tracks if you use it. Marcus looked at Janelle. This is everything. It's not everything. It's what I could get without being caught. But Mr. Brooks, there's more. There are internal databases, passenger flagging records, incident reports that were filed and then buried. If you can get a court to order discovery, you'll find it all. I will. Janelle put her sunglasses back on. She stood up. One more thing. Carla Whitman. She wasn't some loose cannon. She was one of their stars. She had the highest compliance enforcement numbers in her division. She was held up as an example at regional meetings. Whatever she did to your son, she did because she believed the company wanted her to do it. Because they did. She walked out of the library without looking back. Marcus sat there for 10 minutes. He read every page in that envelope. Then he drove home, walked into the dining room where his case files were spread across the table, and called Agent Calloway at the FBI. Agent Calloway, I have a whistleblower, and I have documents. Calloway's voice sharpened immediately. What kind of documents? Internal emails confirming Skybridge distributed tasers to crew members as part of a company program, training materials, a participant list, and testimony about a racial profiling system they've been running for at least 8 years. Silence on the line. 3 seconds. 5. Mr. Brooks, I need those documents today. I'll have copies in your office by 5 p.m. And the whistleblower, is she willing to testify? She is. Then we need to move fast. If Skybridge gets wind of this, those internal databases will disappear overnight. Marcus was already packing his briefcase. That's why I called you first. By 4:30 that afternoon, copies of Janelle's documents were in the hands of the FBI. By 6 p.m., Agent Calloway had obtained an emergency federal order compelling Skybridge Airlines to preserve all internal records related to the Security Enhancement Program, the Priority Watch flagging system, and any personnel files connected to Flight 482. Skybridge's lawyers received that order at 7:12 p.m. Marcus knew the exact time because David Okafor had a contact at the courier service. At 7:41 p.m., 29 minutes after receiving the preservation order, Skybridge Airlines General Counsel Gregory Holt called Marcus. Mr. Brooks, I think we need to have a serious conversation. I agree, but it won't be the conversation you're hoping for. We're prepared to increase our offer substantially. $500,000, full medical coverage for your son through age 21, a public apology from the airline, and the termination of Carla Whitman. Marcus almost laughed. Mr. Holt, 12 hours ago your company offered me $75,000 and a gag order. Now you're at $500,000? What changed in 12 hours? Silence. I'll tell you what changed. You found out that we know about the Security Enhancement Program. You found out we know about Priority Watch. You found out we have documents. And now you're terrified of what discovery is going to reveal. Mr. Brooks, I would caution you against making assumptions about what we know or don't know. And I would caution you, Mr. Holt, against insulting my intelligence. $500,000 for systemic racial profiling, unauthorized weapons distribution, and the assault of a minor. You and I both know that number has at least 2 more zeros before this is over. The answer is no. And the next time you call me, it had better be to discuss terms of surrender. He hung up. Monica was standing behind him. She had heard the whole thing. 500,000? Not even close. What are you going to ask for? Marcus turned to her. I'm not going to ask for anything. I'm going to take everything. And then I'm going to make sure they can never do this again. 3 weeks later, Federal Courthouse in Philadelphia, 9 a.m., the first major hearing. Skybridge Airlines sent a team of 7 lawyers, 7, led by one of the most expensive litigation firms in the country, Blackwell, Crane & Associates. Their lead attorney was a man named Richard Blackwell himself, a 63-year-old corporate defense lawyer who had never lost a federal case. He had defended oil companies, pharmaceutical giants, and 3 different airlines. He was known in legal circles as the Eraser because he made cases disappear. Marcus walked in alone. Just him, his briefcase, his legal pad. Richard Blackwell looked across the courtroom and saw a single attorney at the plaintiff's table. He smiled. It was the kind of smile a man gives when he thinks the fight is already over. The judge was the Honorable Patricia Yamamoto, 22 years on the federal bench, known for 3 things. She was brilliant, she was fair, and she did not tolerate games. Blackwell stood first. Your Honor, we respectfully move to dismiss this case in its entirety. The complaint relies on speculation, unverified claims from an anonymous source, and a selectively edited video that does not represent the full context of the incident. Skybridge Airlines followed established security protocols, and the crew member in question acted within the scope of her duties. Judge Yamamoto looked at Marcus. Mr. Brooks? Marcus stood. Your Honor, if I may, counsel refers to an anonymous source. That source is a current Skybridge employee who has provided sworn testimony and original company documents that confirm the existence of an internal program through which Skybridge Airlines distributed concealed weapons to flight crew members in violation of FAA regulations. The same source has provided evidence of a systematic racial profiling protocol used to target minority passengers for heightened surveillance and aggressive enforcement. He opened his briefcase and placed a stack of documents on the table. I have here copies of internal emails, training presentations, and a program participant roster. These are not allegations, Your Honor. These are the airline's own records. The courtroom shifted. Blackwell's smile vanished. Judge Yamamoto leaned forward. Mr. Blackwell, is your client aware of a program referred to internally as the Security Enhancement Program? Blackwell hesitated. 1 second too long. Your Honor, we would need to review the documents in question before we can respond to that. Then let me make this simple, Judge Yamamoto said. The motion to dismiss is denied. Discovery will proceed. And Mr. Blackwell, I am ordering your client to produce all documents related to the Security Enhancement Program and any passenger flagging systems within 30 days. All documents. Am I clear? Your Honor, we may need to assert certain privileges regarding internal security protocols. You may assert whatever you wish, counsel, and I will rule on each assertion individually. But let me be very direct. If I find that any documents have been destroyed, altered, or withheld in bad faith, the consequences will be severe. 30 days. She struck the gavel. Marcus gathered his papers. As he walked past the defense table, Richard Blackwell spoke without looking up. You're in over your head, Brooks. Marcus stopped. He looked at Blackwell. 7 lawyers. A billion-dollar firm. A client with unlimited resources. And this man thought he could intimidate a civil rights attorney who had been fighting uphill battles since before some of those 7 lawyers had graduated from law school. Mr. Blackwell, Marcus said quietly, I've been over my head my entire career. That's where I do my best work. He walked out. That evening, Marcus called Monica from his hotel room. She put Andre on the phone. Dad, what happened in court today? The judge said we get to keep fighting. Did they try to make it go away? They tried. She said no. Andre was quiet for a second. Dad, my friend Tyler at school said some kids are talking about me, saying I got in trouble on a plane, saying I got arrested. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. What did you tell them? I didn't tell them anything. I just walked away like you said. That's my boy. But Andre, listen, you don't owe those kids silence forever. When this is done, when the truth is all the way out, you'll be able to hold your head up and say, I stood for something. And every single one of those kids will know it. Okay, Dad. How's school? How's trumpet? I'm learning a new piece. It's hard. Good. Hard things are worth doing. I love you, son. Love you too, Dad. Marcus hung up and sat on the edge of the bed. He pressed his palms into his eyes. For 30 seconds, he wasn't Attorney Brooks. He wasn't a civil rights crusader. He was a father who missed his son and couldn't be there to protect him from the whispers and the stares and the casual cruelty of children repeating things they heard from adults who should have known better. Then he stood up, opened his laptop, and went back to work. The discovery period was a war. Skybridge's legal team fought every request. Every document was contested. Every deadline was pushed. They filed motions to seal, motions to limit scope, motions to exclude the whistleblower's testimony, motions to suppress the video evidence based on passenger privacy concerns. Marcus fought them all. David Okafor worked 18-hour days. Their small firm against Blackwell, Crane, and Associates. 3 attorneys against 30. But the documents came, slowly, painfully, with every page extracted like a tooth, but they came. And what they revealed was worse than anyone had imagined. The Priority Watch system had been active for at least 12 years. Over 9,000 minority passengers had been flagged during that time. The flagging was not based on behavior. It was not based on security intelligence. It was based almost entirely on names and physical descriptions pulled from booking records. The Security Enhancement Program had distributed tasers to over 200 crew members across Skybridge's domestic network. There was no FAA authorization, no federal notification, no regulatory oversight of any kind. And buried in the deepest layer of internal communications, Marcus found the document that would blow the case wide open. An email from Skybridge's Vice President of Operations, a man named Thomas Gentry, sent to 6 regional directors 18 months before Andre was tased. The email discussed what Gentry called enforcement optimization and included this passage. Our data shows that assertive intervention with flagged passengers significantly reduces repeat disruptions. Crew members participating in the Security Enhancement Program should be encouraged to act decisively when confronted with non-compliance from monitored individuals. Act decisively. Non-compliance. Monitored individuals. Marcus read that email 7 times. Each time, the words burned hotter. This wasn't Carla Whitman deciding on her own to tase a black teenager. This was a corporate directive. Trickle-down brutality dressed up in boardroom language. A vice president telling his people to use force on minority passengers who didn't immediately submit, and calling it optimization. Marcus forwarded the email to Agent Calloway with one line. This is the smoking gun. Calloway responded in 4 minutes. Agreed. We're convening a grand jury. At home in Atlanta, Andre Brooks came downstairs one morning and found his mother sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. She looked like she'd been crying. Mom, what's wrong? Monica put the phone down. Nothing, baby. Just tired. Mom, I can tell when you're lying. Monica looked at her son, 14 years old and already too perceptive for his own good. She took a breath. Someone at work asked me today if our family was enjoying the attention. Like this is something we wanted. Like your father and I planned this. Andre sat down across from her. What did you say? I said my son was assaulted and we're seeking justice. And if she had a problem with that, she could keep it to herself. Good. Monica reached across the table and held his hand. Andre, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Are you okay? Really okay? Not what you tell Dad, not what you tell your teachers. What's really going on inside? Andre looked at the table for a long time. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. Sometimes at night, I feel it again, the shock. Like my body remembers it even though it's over. And sometimes when someone raises their voice, even a teacher, I flinch. I don't want to. I just do. Monica squeezed his hand hard. Baby, that's trauma, and it's real, and it's not weakness. Your father and I are going to get you someone to talk to, a professional, someone who can help. Will it stop, the flinching? It will get better, I promise you. Andre nodded. He wiped his eyes, then he picked up his backpack and went to school like it was a normal day. Because that's what survivors do. They keep moving, even when every step hurts. Monica waited until he was gone. Then she put her head on the kitchen table and cried so hard her shoulders shook. That night, she called Marcus. He's having flashbacks, physical ones. He flinches when people raise their voices. Marcus was silent for 10 seconds. When he spoke, his voice was different. Not the lawyer voice, not the strategist voice, the father voice, the one that cracked at the edges. I'll find someone, the best trauma specialist in Atlanta, tomorrow. Marcus, are we doing the right thing, fighting this publicly? He's just a kid. He's carrying so much. Monica, if we stop now, they win. And if they win, the next kid who stands up on an airplane doesn't have a father who's a lawyer. The next kid doesn't have a video. The next kid gets tased, and nobody ever hears about it. We're not just fighting for Andre. We're fighting for every Andre who comes after him. Monica was quiet. Then she said, I know. I just wish it wasn't our baby who had to carry this. So do I, every single day. Marcus hung up the phone and sat alone in his Philadelphia hotel room. The documents were spread across every surface. The emails, the training materials, the passenger flagging lists. 9,000 names. 9,000 people targeted because of how they looked or what their names sounded like. He thought about Thomas Gentry's email, act decisively. He thought about Carla Whitman standing over his son. He thought about Andre flinching at raised voices. And he made a promise to himself that he didn't say out loud because he didn't need to. He had made it the moment he saw that 12-second video. But now, with everything he knew, with every document and every name and every lie exposed, the promise had teeth. He was going to take Skybridge Airlines apart. Not just for money, not just for headlines. He was going to dismantle the machine that had hurt his son and 9,000 other people. And he was going to make sure it could never be rebuilt. Marcus picked up his pen. He opened a fresh legal pad, and at the top of the first page, he wrote 2 words, opening statement. Marcus spent 3 weeks writing that opening statement. He wrote it on legal pads. He wrote it on hotel napkins. He wrote it on his phone at 2 a.m. when the words wouldn't stop coming. He rewrote it 11 times, each version sharper than the last, each version stripping away anything that wasn't essential, until what remained was bone and blade. The trial date was set for a Monday in October, 5 months and 12 days after Andre was tased on Flight 482. Federal Courthouse in Philadelphia, Judge Patricia Yamamoto presiding. The case had been assigned a formal name now, Brooks versus Skybridge Airlines Incorporated. But on the internet, on the news, in barbershops and living rooms across America, people just called it the Flight 482 case. The week before trial, Skybridge made one final attempt. Gregory Holt called Marcus on a Wednesday evening at 8:17 p.m. His voice sounded different this time. The corporate polish was gone. He sounded tired. He sounded like a man who had been losing arguments to his own client for months. Mr. Brooks, I'm authorized to offer $3.5 million, full public apology, termination of all crew members involved in the security enhancement program, and the voluntary dismantling of the priority watch system. Marcus was sitting in his Atlanta home office. Monica was upstairs putting Andre to bed. He could hear her voice through the ceiling, reading something to their son the way she had done every night since they got back from Philadelphia, because Andre still had trouble sleeping alone. Mr. Holt, 6 months ago you offered me $75,000, then $500,000, now $3.5 million. Every time I say no, the number goes up, which means every time you make an offer, you already know it's not enough. So let me save us both some time. There is no number that makes this go away before trial. We will see you on Monday. Mr. Brooks, a trial is unpredictable. for both sides. A jury could award less than what we're offering. You could lose. I could, but I won't. That's a dangerous level of confidence. No, Mr. Holt, that's a dangerous level of evidence. Good night. He hung up. Monica was standing in the doorway. She had come downstairs without him hearing. $3.5 million? Yes. And you said no. I said no. Monica walked over and sat on the arm of his chair. She put her hand on his shoulder. Marcus, I trust you. You know I trust you. But I need to hear you say it. Are you sure? Marcus took her hand. Monica, they offered to dismantle Priority Watch as part of the settlement. You know what that means? It means they'd do it quietly. No admission of wrongdoing. No public record. They shut it down behind closed doors, and in 2 years, they started up again under a different name. I've seen it 100 times. These companies don't change because you ask them to. They change because you force them to in front of the whole world. Monica nodded slowly. Okay, then we go to trial. We go to trial. That Sunday night, Marcus drove to Philadelphia alone. He checked into the same hotel he'd been using for months, room 614. The front desk clerk knew him by name now. He went upstairs, hung his suit on the bathroom door, laid his files out on the bed, and read through his opening statement one final time. Then he called Andre. Hey, Dad. Hey, buddy, how are you feeling? Nervous? About what? About tomorrow? About you? Marcus smiled. You're nervous about me? What if they're mean to you? What if they say bad things about us? Andre, they're going to say bad things. That's their job. Their job is to make what happened to you sound like it was your fault. My job is to make sure 12 people on that jury see the truth, and the truth is on our side. Are you nervous? Marcus paused. He could have lied. He could have given his son the strong, unshakable father routine. But Andre deserved more than that. Yeah, buddy, I'm nervous. But I've been nervous before every big case I've ever tried. And you know what I've learned? Nervous means you care. And I care about this case more than any case I've ever had. Because this one is about you. Andre was quiet. Then he said, Dad, I want to be there. Marcus closed his eyes. Andre, I know you said no. I know you want to protect me. But Dad, it's my story. I want to be in that room when you tell it. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He had been so focused on shielding Andre from the spectacle that he hadn't considered what it meant to keep him away from his own fight. This boy had been tased, handcuffed, humiliated, smeared on the internet, and haunted by flashbacks for 5 months. And he was asking to stand up. Let me talk to your mother. He called Monica. They talked for 40 minutes. Monica cried twice. But in the end, they agreed. Andre would be in that courtroom. Not on the stand, not yet, but present, visible. A reminder to every person in that room that this case was about a real child, not a legal abstraction. Monday morning, October 14th, 9 a.m. Marcus Brooks walked into the federal courthouse carrying one briefcase. He wore a charcoal gray suit, white shirt, no tie. He had made that choice deliberately. He wanted the jury to see a father, not a performer. Richard Blackwell arrived with his team of 7. They had added 2 more lawyers since the last hearing. 9 attorneys from Blackwell, Crane & Associates, plus 4 paralegals and a media consultant. They took up the entire defense table and part of the gallery. Marcus sat up alone at the plaintiff's table. 1 chair, 1 briefcase, 1 glass of water. The gallery was packed. National media in the back rows, civil rights leaders, legal analysts. And in the front row, directly behind Marcus, sat Monica Brooks and Andre Brooks. Andre was wearing a navy blue blazer his mother had bought him for the college visits they never got to take. He sat with his hands folded in his lap and his back straight. He looked older than 14. 5 months of this had aged him in ways that shouldn't happen to a child. Judge Yamamoto entered. The courtroom stood. She took her seat, adjusted her glasses, and looked at both tables. Mr. Brooks, your opening statement. Marcus stood. He buttoned his jacket. He walked to the front of the jury box. 12 faces looked back at him. 7 women, 5 men. 4 black, 3 white, 2 Hispanic, 2 Asian, 1 who had checked other on the questionnaire. Middle class, working class, parents, grandparents, people who rode buses and drove trucks and bagged groceries and answered phones. Marcus looked at them for 5 full seconds without speaking. The silence was deliberate. He wanted their attention before he said a single word. Then he began. On June 4th of this year, a 14-year-old boy named Andre Brooks boarded his first airplane. He was flying with his mother from Atlanta to Boston to visit colleges. He was an honor roll student. He played trumpet in his school's jazz band. He had never been in trouble a single day in his life. And before that plane landed, a flight attendant named Carla Whitman pressed a taser against his body and sent 50,000 volts of electricity through him. His crime was asking to use the bathroom. Marcus paused. Let it land. You've probably seen the video. 47 million people have. But I'm not going to show you that video right now. I'm going to show you something the video doesn't capture. I'm going to show you what happened before the camera started rolling and what happened after it stopped. I'm going to show you internal emails from Skybridge Airlines executives instructing their crew to, and I'm quoting directly, act decisively against non-compliant, monitored individuals. I'm going to show you a secret program that armed over 200 flight attendants with concealed weapons that violate federal law. I'm going to show you a passenger flagging system that targeted over 9,000 people based on the color of their skin and the sound of their names. And I'm going to show you that what happened to Andre Brooks was not an accident. It was not a mistake. It was not one flight attendant having a bad day. It was company policy. He turned and looked at Andre. The jury followed his gaze. 12 pairs of eyes landed on a 14-year-old boy in a navy blazer sitting behind his father. That's my son. His name is Andre. He's here today because he asked to be, because he believes that the truth matters. And over the next several days, you're going to hear that truth, all of it. And when you do, I'm going to ask you to hold this company accountable, not just for what they did to my boy, but for every person they did it to who didn't have a video, who didn't have a lawyer, who took the settlement and signed the NDA and stayed silent because they thought no one would believe them. Marcus walked back to his table. He sat down. He didn't look at the defense. He didn't need to. The jury was his. Richard Blackwell stood for the defense. He was polished. He was smooth. He spent 20 minutes talking about airline safety, the challenges of maintaining order at 30,000 feet, the split-second decisions crew members have to make. He called Carla Whitman a dedicated professional who acted in the interest of passenger safety. He called the Security Enhancement Program a prudent response to evolving threats. He called Priority Watch a data-driven risk assessment tool consistent with industry best practices. He never once said Andre's name. Marcus noticed. The jury noticed. The first witness was called Tuesday morning, passenger Karen Ashford, the woman who had recorded the video. Marcus approached her gently. She was visibly nervous. Her hands gripped the witness box railing. Mrs. Ashford, can you tell the jury what you observed on Flight 482? Karen Ashford took a shaky breath. I was sitting across the aisle from Andre and his mother. I noticed the flight attendant from the moment we boarded. She was warm to everyone ahead of me in line, smiling, helpful. But when the young man and his mother reached her, she changed completely. Her face went blank. Her voice went cold. I remember thinking, that's strange. What happened when Andre stood up during the flight? He stood up to use the restroom. He was calm. He was polite. I heard him say, "Yes, ma'am," multiple times. The flight attendant told him to sit down. He explained he needed the bathroom. She escalated immediately. It went from 0 to 100 in seconds. Did you observe another passenger use the restroom while the seatbelt sign was on? Yes, a white teenager a few rows ahead. He got up, walked to the bathroom, came back. The flight attendant watched him do it and said nothing. What happened when the flight attendant deployed the taser? Karen Ashford's composure cracked. Her eyes filled. I heard the sound first, this crackling, awful sound, and then Andre his whole body went rigid, and he fell. He fell so hard, and the sound he made when he hit the floor, I will never forget that sound for the rest of my life. He was just a boy. He was just a child asking to use the bathroom. Blackwell's cross-examination was brief and surgical. He suggested Karen might have missed earlier interactions. She hadn't. He suggested the video didn't capture the full context. She pointed out that she had been watching since boarding. He suggested she was emotionally compromised. She looked him dead in the eye and said, "Sir, I watched a woman electrocute a child. Yes, I'm emotional. Anyone who isn't would be the one with the problem." 2 jurors nodded. The second witness was Reese Santiago, the paramedic. She testified about Andre's condition: heart rate of 142, burn marks, dehydration, shock. She testified that the police officer initially blocked her from examining Andre and that she had to threaten legal action to treat a minor in custody. Blackwell tried to minimize the medical evidence. Isn't it true that taser injuries are generally non-life-threatening? Reese didn't hesitate. In adults with normal cardiac function, usually. In a 14-year-old child with no prior screening, a taser discharge can cause cardiac arrhythmia, respiratory failure, and in rare cases, death. This child was lucky. That's not a medical opinion. That's a fact. Wednesday morning, Day 3. Marcus called Dorothy Chen, the retired nurse who had pushed past Carla to help Andre on the plane. Dorothy was 71 years old. She had been a nurse for 50 years. She spoke with the kind of authority that comes from decades of saving lives. "Mrs. Chen, what did you observe when you reached Andre?" His pupils were dilated. His pulse was rapid and irregular. He was disoriented and unable to respond to verbal commands. He was showing signs consistent with electrical shock and the onset of acute stress response. "What did the flight attendant do when you tried to help?" "She tried to stop me. She told me to return to my seat and that it was a security matter. I told her it was a medical emergency and that she needed to get out of my way." "And did she?" "Eventually, but not because she wanted to, because I didn't give her a choice." In your professional opinion, what would have happened if Andre hadn't received immediate monitoring? Dorothy Chen looked at the jury. "In my 50 years of nursing, I have seen electrical injuries go wrong very quickly. If that boy's heart had gone into arrhythmia at 30,000 feet with no defibrillator and a flight attendant blocking medical access, he could have died before that plane touched the ground." The courtroom went still. Blackwell didn't cross-examine Dorothy Chen. There was nothing to gain and everything to lose. Thursday, Day 4. Marcus played the video for the jury. He had waited deliberately. 3 days of testimony first. 3 days of building the picture. Now, the video. 4 minutes and 11 seconds on a screen in a federal courtroom. The audio was crystal clear. Every "yes, ma'am" from Andre. Every escalation from Carla. The moment she pulled the taser, the sound of the discharge, Andre hitting the floor, Monica's scream, Carla's radio call, non-compliant passenger. When the video ended, Marcus let the silence hold for 10 seconds. 2 jurors were crying. One had her hand over her mouth. A man in the back row of the jury box was gripping the armrest so hard his knuckles were white. Marcus said, "The defense has called this a safety protocol. I want you to watch it again and tell me if that looks like safety to you." He played it again. Blackwell objected. "Your Honor, playing the video twice is prejudicial." Judge Yamamoto looked at him over her glasses. Overruled. The jury is entitled to examine the evidence thoroughly. Friday, Day 5. Marcus called Janelle Parsons. This was the moment the entire trial had been building toward. The courtroom knew it. The media knew it. Blackwell's team had spent weeks trying to exclude her testimony. They had filed motions to dismiss her as a disgruntled employee. They had challenged her credibility. They had argued that her documents were obtained without authorization. Judge Yamamoto had denied every motion. Janelle walked into that courtroom wearing a dark blue dress and no expression. She'd been placed under federal whistleblower protection 3 months earlier. Skybridge had already fired her. Just as she predicted, Marcus had filed a separate retaliation suit the same day. She sat in the witness chair and looked straight ahead. "Ms. Parsons, how long did you work for Skybridge Airlines?" 8 years. "During those 8 years, were you aware of a program called the Security Enhancement Program?" "Yes." "Can you describe it?" Skybridge Airlines purchased compact tasers in bulk and distributed them to flight crew members who volunteered for the program. The devices were small enough to conceal in a uniform vest or pocket. Crew members were instructed to carry them discreetly and to report any use through the standard incident reporting system. Were these weapons authorized by the FAA? No, the FAA was never notified. Were passengers informed that crew members might be armed? No, passengers had no knowledge of the program. How many crew members participated? At the time I left, over 200. A murmur went through the gallery. Judge Yamamoto didn't need to call for order. The murmur died on its own, killed by the weight of what was being said. Ms. Parsons, were you also aware of a system called Priority Watch? Janelle's jaw tightened. Yes. Describe it. Before every flight, the lead flight attendant received a modified passenger manifest. Certain passengers were highlighted, flagged. Those passengers were designated for enhanced monitoring during the flight. It meant crew members were supposed to watch them more closely, intervene more quickly, and document any behavior that could be characterized as non-compliant. How were passengers selected for flagging? Janelle looked at the jury. Names. Ethnic-sounding names were flagged. Last-minute bookings by certain demographics. Young men of color traveling alone or in groups. Sometimes it was based on previous complaints, but most of the time it was based on race and national origin. Everyone in the company knew it. No one talked about it, and no one stopped it. Did you ever raise concerns? Once, early on. I told my supervisor that I thought the flagging system was discriminatory. She told me it was a security tool and that if I had a problem with it, I should find another airline. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Janelle's eyes glistened. She blinked hard. Because I was afraid. I have 2 children. I'm a single mother. That job was my life. And I told myself that if I kept my head down and just did my work and didn't participate in the worst of it, that was enough. But it wasn't enough. Watching that video of Andre, watching a 14-year-old boy get tased for asking to use the bathroom, I realized that my silence was part of the machine, and I couldn't carry that anymore. Marcus let her words settle over the courtroom. He looked at the jury. Several of them were looking at Janelle with something that went beyond sympathy. It was recognition. The recognition of every person who has ever stayed silent when they should have spoken and knew the cost of both choices. Thank you, Ms. Parsons. Blackwell stood for cross-examination. He approached Janelle like a surgeon approaching a delicate operation. Careful, controlled. Ms. Parsons, you were terminated by Skybridge Airlines, correct? Yes. So you have a personal grievance against the company. I have a grievance against what the company does to people. That started long before they fired me. You took internal documents without authorization. I took evidence of illegal activity. There's a difference. That's for the court to decide, Ms. Parsons. Then let the court decide. I'll wait. Blackwell paused. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he sat down. He had gotten nothing, and he knew it. That night, Marcus sat in his hotel room and stared at the wall. The prosecution's case was almost complete. 2 more witnesses, the medical expert, and then the decision that had kept him up for a week, whether to put Andre on the stand. The phone rang. It was Monica. Marcus, he wants to testify. I know. He keeps saying it's his story. He says the jury needs to hear it from him. He's 14, Monica. He's 14, and he's stronger than most adults I've ever met. Marcus, he looked me in the eye tonight and said, Mom, if I don't speak, then she wins. She made me silent on that plane. I won't let her make me silent in that courtroom. Marcus pressed his hand against his forehead. His son's words hit him harder than any argument Blackwell could make. Blackwell will cross-examine him. He'll try to confuse him. He'll try to make him angry. He'll try to make him look like the threat they claim he was. And Andre will handle it. You know he will. You trained him. Marcus was quiet for a long time, the longest silence of the entire case. Okay, he testifies. Monday morning, day 8 of the trial, the moment the entire case had been building toward. Marcus barely slept the night before. He had gone over every possible question Blackwell might ask Andre. He had rehearsed with Monica on the phone until midnight. He had written notes. He had crossed them out. he had written new ones. And then, at 2 in the morning, he had thrown all the notes away because the truth didn't need a script. Andre arrived at the courthouse at 8:15 a.m. with Monica. He was wearing the same navy blazer, white shirt, dark pants. His shoes were polished. Monica had polished them herself that morning because her hands needed something to do besides shake. Marcus met them in the hallway outside the courtroom. He looked at his son. Andre's face was calm. Too calm for a 14-year-old about to sit in a federal witness chair and relive the worst moment of his life in front of strangers. Andre, you don't have to do this. I can still call the medical expert instead. We have enough to win without your testimony. Andre looked at his father. Dad, you've been fighting for me for 5 months. Let me fight for myself. Just this once. Marcus put his hand on Andre's shoulder. He squeezed. He didn't trust his voice, so he just nodded. They walked into the courtroom together, all 3 of them, family. Judge Yamamoto took the bench at 9 sharp. The jury filed in, 12 faces that had been listening for 8 days. They looked tired. They looked heavy. They had seen the video 3 times. They had heard the whistleblower. They had read the emails. And now they were about to hear from the boy at the center of all of it. Marcus stood. The plaintiff calls Andre Brooks. The courtroom shifted. Every head turned. Every camera in the media section focused. Richard Blackwell straightened in his chair. His legal team exchanged glances. Andre stood up from the front row. Monica squeezed his hand and let go. He walked to the witness stand. He was sworn in. He sat down. His feet didn't quite touch the floor, and somehow that detail, that small physical reminder that this was a child, hit harder than anything anyone had said in 8 days. Marcus approached his son, not as a lawyer approaches a witness, as a father approaches his child in a room full of people who need to understand what was done to him. Andre, can you tell the jury about the morning of June 4th? Andre leaned forward slightly. His voice was steady. I woke up really early, like 5:30. I was too excited to sleep. It was my first time flying. My mom and I were going to Boston to look at colleges. I packed my bag the night before. I had a book my dad gave me. I had a notebook where I wrote down questions I wanted to ask at the campus tours. What kind of questions? Like what programs they had for pre-law, whether they had jazz bands, what the dorms were like, stuff like that. When you boarded the plane, what happened? Andre paused, just for a beat. The flight attendant was greeting people when they got on. She was smiling at everyone, being friendly. But when my mom and I got to her, she stopped smiling. She didn't say hello. She didn't say welcome aboard. She just looked at our boarding passes and pointed us toward our seats. Her whole attitude changed. How did that make you feel? I noticed it right away, but my mom gave me the look, the one that means don't react, keep moving. So I didn't say anything. I just went to my seat. Tell the jury what happened when you stood up during the flight. Andre's hands tightened on the armrest, just slightly. The seatbelt sign was on. I needed to use the bathroom. I had seen another kid, a white kid a few rows ahead, get up and go to the bathroom like 10 minutes before. Nobody said anything to him. The flight attendant watched him do it and didn't care, so I thought it was okay. What happened when you stood up? She yelled at me, told me to sit down. I said, yes, ma'am, I just need to use the restroom. She got louder. She said I was being non-compliant. My mom stood up and tried to explain. The flight attendant told my mom to control me. Andre stopped. He swallowed hard. And then she pulled something out of her vest. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't have time to react. She pushed it into my stomach, and everything went white. My whole body locked up. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I just fell. What do you remember after that? My mom's voice. She was screaming my name. I could hear her, but I couldn't answer. My body was shaking, and I couldn't make it stop. I thought I was dying. I really thought I was going to die on that airplane floor. A juror in the front row wiped her eyes. Another one wasn't trying to hide it, tears running straight down his face. What happened when the plane landed? Police got on. They came straight to me. They called me the suspect. They handcuffed me. My wrists were so small the cuffs were too tight, and I told them it hurt, and they didn't adjust them. I was shaking so bad I could barely walk. They took me off the plane and put me in a room, and I sat there in handcuffs, and nobody would tell me what was going to happen. Were you scared? Andre looked at the jury, not at his father, at the 12 strangers who held his story in their hands. I was more scared than I've ever been in my life. I kept thinking about what my dad told me before the trip. He said, if anything goes wrong, be respectful, keep your hands visible, don't argue, find your mom. I did all of that, everything, and I still got tased. I still got handcuffed, and the whole time I kept asking myself what I did wrong, and I couldn't figure it out, because I didn't do anything wrong. Marcus let the silence breathe. 5 seconds. 7. Andre, since that day, how has your life changed? Andre's composure flickered. For the first time, his voice cracked. I have nightmares, almost every night. I flinch when people raise their voices, even my teachers, even my mom sometimes. I started seeing a therapist because my body remembers the shock, even when my brain knows it's over. I used to love going places. Now I get nervous in public. I get nervous around people in uniforms. I get nervous when someone looks at me a certain way, like I don't belong somewhere. He paused, breathed, continued. I was supposed to visit Harvard on that trip. I never got to go. And for a while, I didn't even want to anymore. Because I thought, what's the point? I could get perfect grades and volunteer every weekend and say yes, ma'am, and no, sir, and do everything right, and someone can still hurt me just because of how I look. That's what it took from me. Not just that day. It took the way I used to see the future. The courtroom was completely still. No movement, no sound. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. No further questions. He sat down. Monica was gripping the bench behind him so hard her fingers were white. Tears were falling onto her lap, and she wasn't wiping them. Richard Blackwell stood. He buttoned his jacket. He approached Andre the way a large animal approaches something small, measuring, calculating, deciding how much force to apply. Andre, you mentioned that you saw another passenger use the restroom while the seatbelt sign was on. Yes, sir. Is it possible that the seatbelt sign had been briefly turned off and you didn't notice? No, sir. It was on the entire time. I was watching it. You were watching the seatbelt sign? Yes, sir, because my mom told me to pay attention to it since it was my first flight. Blackwell shifted. When the flight attendant asked you to sit down, did you sit down? I tried to explain that I needed the bathroom. So the answer is no, you did not immediately sit down. Andre looked at Blackwell. I said yes, ma'am, and explained why I needed to stand, the same way the other kid did, except nobody asked him to explain anything. Blackwell pressed. Isn't it possible that you were louder than you realized? That in the stress of the moment your voice was raised? No, sir. I know my voice wasn't raised because my dad taught me that when someone in authority talks to you, you keep your voice low. I remember exactly how I sounded. I was calm. Your father taught you that. Your father, the civil rights attorney. My father taught me that because he's my dad, and he wanted me to be safe. Blackwell paused. He had expected to rattle this boy. He had expected hesitation, confusion, maybe anger he could exploit. He was getting none of it. He was getting a 14-year-old who answered every question with the precision of someone who had been raised by the best cross-examiner in the state. Andre, do you think it's possible that the flight attendant genuinely felt threatened by you? Andre looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, Sir, I weighed 140 pounds. My hands were at my sides. I said, yes, ma'am, 3 times. If she felt threatened by that, then the threat wasn't me. The threat was something she brought with her onto that plane. The courtroom exhaled. One of Blackwell's own associates dropped her pen. Blackwell looked at the judge. No further questions. Andre stepped down from the witness stand. He walked back to the front row. Monica pulled him into her arms and held him so tight, he almost disappeared. Marcus turned in his chair and put his hand on Andre's knee and left it there. The defense presented its case over the next 3 days. They called Carla Whitman. She testified that she felt physically threatened by Andre's aggressive body language. Under Marcus's cross-examination, she could not identify a single aggressive action Andre had taken. She could not explain why she hadn't challenged the white teenager. She could not explain why she was carrying a taser. And when Marcus asked her, "Ms. Whitman, did Skybridge Airlines provide you with that taser?" She looked at her lawyers, looked at the jury, and said, "I was advised not to answer that question." Marcus turned to the jury. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. They called Thomas Gentry, the vice president of operations, who had written the Act Decisively email. Gentry spent 40 minutes claiming the email was taken out of context. Marcus read it back to him, word by word. Assertive intervention with flagged passengers. Act decisively when confronted with non-compliance from monitored individuals. He asked Gentry, "What does act decisively mean to you, Mr. Gentry?" Gentry said, "It means use professional judgment." Marcus said, "Professional judgment? Is that what you call tasing a 14-year-old boy?" Blackwell objected. Sustained. But the damage was done. Every juror had heard it. Every juror was looking at Gentry like they could see right through him. Closing arguments came on a Thursday, day 12. Richard Blackwell went first. He spoke for 45 minutes. He talked about safety. He talked about the impossible pressures flight crews face. He talked about hindsight and the danger of judging split-second decisions from the comfort of a courtroom. He asked the jury to consider the full picture, not the viral moment. He used the phrase unfortunate incident 4 times. He never said Andre's name, not once in 12 days. Then Marcus stood. He walked to the jury box. He stood close enough to touch the railing. And he spoke quietly, almost conversationally, like he was talking to 12 people at a kitchen table. In 12 days of testimony, the defense attorney has not said my son's name. Not once. Andre. His name is Andre. He is 14 years old. He is sitting right behind me, and the reason Mr. Blackwell won't say his name is because it's easy to defend a policy. It's easy to defend a protocol. It's easy to defend a corporation. But it is very hard to defend what was done to a child when you have to say his name while you do it. He paused. The defense wants you to believe this was a safety response, that Carla Whitman was doing her job. But you've seen the evidence. You've read the emails. You've heard from a whistleblower who risked everything to tell you the truth. Skybridge Airlines built a system that targeted people based on race, a system that armed crew members with illegal weapons, a system that trained those crew members to act aggressively against passengers who were flagged not for what they did, but for who they were. And on June 4th, that system did exactly what it was designed to do. It found a black child who dared to stand up on an airplane, and it put him on the floor. Marcus turned and looked at Andre. Andre looked back. My son told you something on that witness stand that I cannot stop thinking about. He said, "I did everything right, and it still happened." That sentence should haunt every person in this room, because it means the system wasn't broken. The system worked. It worked exactly the way Skybridge designed it to work. And the only way to stop it from working like that ever again is for the 12 of you to say, not with protests, not with hashtags, not with outrage on the internet, but with a verdict that this is not acceptable, that this will not be tolerated, that a child's dignity is not something a corporation can tase out of him at 30,000 feet. He stepped back. Andre Brooks did everything right. It's time for this jury to do the same. He sat down. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and 14 minutes. At 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday in October, the foreperson stood and read the verdict. On the count of excessive force, libel. On the count of civil rights violations under Section 1983, libel. On the count of systemic racial profiling, libel. On the count of negligent hiring, training, and supervision, libel. On all counts, Skybridge Airlines was found liable. The damages? $20 million, $12 million in compensatory damages, $8 million in punitive damages. Monica broke. She grabbed Marcus, she grabbed Andre. The three of them held each other in that courtroom while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, and the defense table sat in absolute silence. But Marcus didn't celebrate the money. Not that night. Not ever. Because the money was never the point. Within 72 hours of the verdict, Marcus filed a petition with the court requesting injunctive relief. He wanted structural change, not a check, change. Judge Yamamoto granted a hearing, and 2 weeks later, she issued a landmark order. Skybridge Airlines was required to immediately dismantle the Priority Watch flagging system, every record destroyed under court supervision. The security enhancement program was terminated. All unauthorized weapons were to be collected and surrendered to the FAA within 30 days. Every crew member who had participated in the program was required to undergo retraining and recertification. But Marcus pushed further. He petitioned for industry-wide reform. He testified before a congressional subcommittee on transportation safety. He presented the evidence, the emails, the flagging lists, the 9,000 names. He stood in front of elected officials and said, "If this was happening at one airline, it is happening at others, and we cannot wait for another child to be tased before we act." Congress launched an investigation. The FAA issued new emergency directives prohibiting airline crew from carrying personal weapons of any kind. A federal task force was created to audit passenger profiling practices across all major domestic carriers. Carla Whitman was charged with felony assault and violation of federal aviation security statutes. She pleaded no contest and was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison and permanent revocation of her crew certification. Thomas Gentry resigned. 3 regional directors were terminated. Skybridge Airlines stock dropped 22% in the month following the verdict, and the company's CEO issued a public apology that Marcus called a good start, but only a start. Janelle Parsons won her retaliation suit. She was awarded $1.2 million and was offered reinstatement. She declined. She said she didn't want to go back to an airline. She wanted to start over. She used part of the settlement to go back to school. She enrolled in law school at Howard University. When Marcus heard that, he laughed for the first time in months. A real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep. Andre went back to school after the trial. He didn't go back the same boy who had left. He couldn't. The flashbacks faded over time, but they didn't disappear completely. Some nights he still jolted awake, his body remembering voltage his mind was trying to forget. His therapist told him that was normal, that trauma lives in the body longer than it lives in the mind, that healing isn't a destination, it's a direction. He went back to jazz band. He practiced trumpet every day after school. He told his music teacher, "When I play, I don't think about anything else. It's the only time my brain goes quiet." 2 months after the trial, Andre finally took that trip to Boston. Marcus went with him this time. They walked the Harvard campus together on a Saturday afternoon. Andre had his notebook, the same notebook he had packed for the flight that never made it. They stood outside the law school, and Andre stared at the building for a long time. "Dad, do you ever get tired of fighting?" Marcus thought about it every day. "Then why do you keep doing it?" "Because every time I think about stopping, I think about the next kid in that airplane aisle, the one who doesn't have a lawyer for a dad, the one whose mom can't afford a hospital, the one who gets tased and nobody ever hears about it. I keep fighting because stopping means leaving that kid alone, and I can't do that." Andre nodded. He opened his notebook. He wrote something down. Marcus didn't ask what it was. 3 years later, when Andre applied to Harvard, he wrote his admissions essay about Flight 482. Not about the taser, not about the trial, not about the $20 million. He wrote about the moment he stood in that airplane aisle and said, "Yes, ma'am," and meant it. He wrote about what it felt like to do everything right and still be punished. And he wrote about the choice he made in that courtroom to speak, not because anyone forced him to, but because silence is a kind of surrender, and he had decided at 14 years old that he would never surrender who he was. He was accepted. Monica called Marcus at his office. She was crying so hard she could barely get the words out. "He got in, Marcus, he got in." Marcus put the phone down. He closed his office door, and he sat in his chair and cried. Not the silent, controlled grief of a man managing a crisis. the real thing. The overwhelming, chest-breaking release of a father who had watched his son get electrocuted on an airplane floor, and somehow, through all of it, that boy had come out the other side still believing the world was worth fighting for. A journalist asked Andre months after the trial what he wanted people to remember about his story. He thought about it for a long time. Then he said something that every person in that room wrote down. "I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to use the bathroom like everyone else. And when they wouldn't let me do that, when they hurt me for asking, I decided that I wasn't going to let them decide who I am. They called me a suspect. They called me non-compliant. They called me a threat. But my name is Andre Brooks. I'm a trumpet player. I'm a law student, and I'm still standing." Marcus Brooks never took another settlement with a non-disclosure agreement, not once. Every case he filed from that day forward included a clause requiring public disclosure of findings. He told his clients, "Silence is how they survive. Transparency is how we win." He kept a framed copy of Andre's Harvard acceptance letter on his office wall. Next to it, he kept a photograph, not from the trial, not from the press conference. A photograph of Andre at age 14 sitting at a kitchen table in Atlanta, holding a Harvard brochure and